everybody find their way back to their seat, and we'll get started back. Hang on just a second. Appreciate your patience there. All right, I'd like to ask everybody in the back, if you would, please be seated or take your conversations into the hall, please. Okay, the break is over and we're back. Sir, you have the floor, so please state your name.
I appreciate that. My name is Denny Johnson. I'm the new Lake County Mayor. I have been on the commission for over 20 years, but I would like to pretty much echo what the resort owners and the merchants have said about the decline of Reelfoot Lake. I think back around 10 or 12 years ago, we have a hotel motel tax, and 10 or 12 years ago, we were passing back to the Tourism Council about $80,000 a year. And this year in my budget, it looks like it's about $24,000. So you can see that the general trend has been down. And I'd like to say that our county is the 11th poorest county in the United States. It's an honor that I hate to even admit, but it is the truth. And any negative impact on Reelfoot Lake, it's one of our largest sources of revenue. Any impact is going to impact our county, and we should surely consider removing that user fee on our lake. That's all I have to say.
Yes, sir.
I have a question regarding that user fee, if I may. And Chris, maybe you can answer this. Did we establish that fee? Did this commission establish that fee, or how is that?
The Reelfoot Preservation Permit is established in state statute. It's in the code. This commission has the authority to adjust and set that fee, and it has the authority to pass rules and regulations to state who is required to have that permit. But as far as the actually abolishing the fee completely, it would take a legislative action to do that.
We could not do that.
No, sir.
Same sort of question, I guess, relating to the license agent fee. There's been some discussion of that. Can you explain how that works?
It's very similar, Commissioner, in that the agent fee is set by state statute. This commission does not have the authority to raise that agent fee. That would also be required to go through the legislative process and take legislative action to increase or decrease the amount that the agent receives. I can tell you that under existing law, a convenience fee for the use of a credit card would be permissible for our license agents to charge.
For us to take any action on that, since it wasn't noticed, what's the general process?
With regard to the Reelfoot Preservation fee?
Yeah.
The commission today and the rule before it would have the authority to raise the fee, lower the fee, change the amount of the fee. The rules and regulations that dictate who is required to have the permit and when they're required to have the permit is contained in a different rule and would have to be brought before the commission in a different rulemaking hearing to amend a different portion of our rules and regs.
Mr. Chairman, one more thing, and then I'll.
Okay.
Is the user fee in addition to WMA charge on Reelfoot?
No, the Reelfoot Preservation fee, the Reelfoot Preservation permit is in lieu of a traditional wildlife management area permit. If you are to get on Reelfoot Lake and duck hunt, for example, you're not required to buy the typical wildlife management area permit. The Reelfoot Preservation fee takes the place of that, and in fact, the Reelfoot Preservation fee is cheaper than the WMA permit would be.
Thank you.
What's that fee used for? I mean, what's it?
The state the code, the state statute relative to the preservation fee says that fee shall be spent on acquiring lands and maintaining lands on Reelfoot Lake and around Reelfoot Lake. Alan Peterson, the Region 1 manager, could speak in more detail, but I can tell you that last year the Reelfoot Preservation permit generated approximately $217,000 in revenue. The Reelfoot Lake WMA budget Just the one budget associated with Reelfoot WMA is in excess of $300,000. That doesn't include what we spend for jet spraying. That's about $165,000. It doesn't include what we spend on vegetation control, which is another $60,000. It doesn't include improvements to White's Landing or to levees and other work that's been done on Black Bayou. So we are spending far in excess of the $217,000 that the preservation permit generates. We're spending much more money than that at Reelfoot Lake.
I have a question on the high-impact users or WMAs. If, and the man that was referenced to his campground and the horses, that it was $71. But explain to me, and I want the public to know too, if you have a valid regular hunting fishing license, a $32 license, and you can then buy a one-day permit, I mean, you can buy a WMA permit separately, is that $10 a day then? Or tell me, add that up and what it would be then.
I'm going to lean on Barry to do the math here for just a second, but the answer to your question is, in a minute or at the end of the discussion, the agency does have a proposed clarifying language with regard to the wildlife management area high impact user fee. And if a person is licensed and permitted to hunt that area, they would not be required to buy the WMA high impact user fee. We would accept the hunting license and permit in lieu of the WMA high impact user fee. Now, one thing to consider, and our horseback riders should recognize, is that the purchase of a hunting and fishing license, while it will be qualified for federal matching dollars, and we will be able to draw that money down, the money that we receive in that regard cannot be spent on recreational trail maintenance. However, the money that we generate from the WMA high impact user fee, we expect and plan to put that money directly back into trail maintenance improvements for those facilities for our recreational riders, whether they be horseback, OHV, or bicyclists. And Barry, you can tell me what the cheapest way of, what the hunting license and permit option would look like versus the fee.
Okay, for residents or non-residents?
Both. Non-resident specifically then.
Okay. For just one day or for an annual?
Both. Come on, Barry,
Okay,
you can do it.
that's all right, we can go through it, and now I need to know under the current fees or the proposed fees?
Proposed fees.
Okay. A non-resident could buy a non-resident, they just want to go for a day or a weekend or something, a non-resident 7-day, which costs $61.50 with the agent's fee, and then they would need a WMA permit to go with that, a WMA 1-day, it's another $21, so yeah, $82.
Okay, but then if they do the next day, it'd just be $21, right?
Correct.
Okay. In other words, if they came for several days, it wouldn't be $70-some a day. It's going to be 81 and then 21, 21, 21.
Right.
Okay. That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, we are going back to the floor. Mr. Hayes, I'll let you speak again, but everybody in the room gets to go one time before anybody goes 2 times. All right, I'm back to the floor. Anybody in the audience like to address the commission? Mr. Hayes? It needs to be something new, okay? Okay.
One thing he said about the user fee, about how much you paid and how much you didn't pay, when I was on the commission, that I had a study done. And with all the other licenses combined, Reelfoot was way in the black on the revenue versus expense. Some of the other WMAs, there was one in particular, lost $28,000 per person, or $24,000 per person per year on that WMA. There's a lot of WMAs that cost a lot of money and lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, I don't want Reelfoot to be impacted by what you said, that it's not covering the cost. Plus, other WMA get part of the real estate transfer tax there and to maintain it. Reelfoot never got part of that, but all the rest of the refuges gets part of that money. But you do have another revenue that comes from the state that, you know, I didn't hear mentioned. I don't know how much it is now. Some years it can be 10 million, and some years they'll take it away from them, and it may not be but 1 million. But that's a benefit the other WMAs get to put on their books to show that they're not having the cost compared to Reelfoot. Thank you.
You want to address that?
I'll just say that what former Commissioner Hayes is referring to is the wetlands fund, wetlands acquisition fund, and properties that we purchase with the wetlands acquisition fund are eligible for some amount of money to be spent in maintaining those lands. I don't have in front of me if or what land we've purchased in and around Reelfoot with the wetlands acquisition fund, which is tied to the real estate transfer tax, but any properties that we own there are also eligible for those dollars to be spent here in the Reelfoot area. And I didn't, when I said that the preservation fee brings in $217,000 and we spend more than that at Reelfoot Lake, that's not to say that I don't mean to represent that Reelfoot is not covering its costs. Reelfoot Lake is a state treasure, and there is no place else like it in the world. And we like the work that we do at Reelfoot. We want to do as much as we can, and we want people to continue to come and experience what is a treasure and what is a unique experience from any place else in the world.
Mr. Cox?
I'd like to know from someone how much we've discussed the new gate,
The
structure.
spillway?
What spillway structure? Thank you. What's that going to cost to operate a year? Do we know that? And it's going to cost us $400,000 for the plan, or is that, did we negotiate that out, or what's the annual operating budget for that, for the new spillway?
We don't really have hard numbers. We have an estimate what we think it's going to cost, but you know, lowest numbers probably $200,000 a year.
And just to give an update, Commissioner, if I can tag on to that, we have had recent meetings with both the Governor's Office, the administration, and with the Department of Transportation. And I can tell you that there are some things that have to be done to the new spillway that to bring it online. And the meetings with the Department of Transportation and the administration went very well. We have a plan in place where the Department of Transportation is going to finish some items, correct some items, and do some work. When that work is completed, which we hope to be this spring or into early summer, we plan to take jurisdiction of the spillway, but we will not take it until that work is complete. We want a fully operational structure, and when that happens, and when TDOT completes their work, that's when we'll move forward with that.
All right, before I let you come back over, earlier when I announced today, I said there was a tablet that was going to be passed around to get your name and information. Our secretary told me that she didn't feel like that everybody maybe had signed it. I'd like to ask one of our officers, if anybody's in here in the meeting that has not signed it, we would like to have a record of your attendance today. So we may pass that back around, Darren, in just time. All right, sir, and this is your second go-around. That's okay then. That's no problem. Come on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Directing my question to you on the spillway, what you just mentioned, if
You got to direct it to me, and
I'm
then
sorry.
I'll go to him.
I,
That's fine.
I understand what I just heard was that TWRA was going to be operating the new spillway. True?
We will assume jurisdiction of the new spillway structure.
And it's an automatic, I understand, computerized, there's not going to be really any manual labor there, it's going to kind of be automatic.
We hope that the structure will operate in that manner and maintain the water levels on Reelfoot Lake. We do intend on pursuing, and we are hopeful that we will enter into an agreement with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service like we have now, where they will be the ones that actually manipulate the gates.
Thank you. Second part of that is there continuing work to finish the old spillway to stop the water from leaving Reelfoot Lake and allowing the carp to come in?
In the discussions with the administration and with the Department of Transportation, Absolutely. When the new spillway is finished and it goes online, and we're confident that it will operate correctly and maintain the water levels as they are, Department of Transportation has detailed plans to come in and correct the roadway, which will correct the old structure and take care of any of those problems.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Back on the floor. Anybody else? Last chance. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
Yes, my name is Jill White. I'm owner with mom and pop operation of Cypress Point Resort. I'm not a speaker. My husband's not here because we're promoting Reelfoot Lake. We're at Cincinnati Boat Show, trying to get people to come to Reelfoot. My problem is, of course, Mike brought the stats, who's my brother, another property on Reelfoot. He brought the stats that with an increase in license, of course, my main thing is the user's fee. I know y'all have to maintain the rest of the state, but we have a double license, and so therefore the stats show, just like your stats showed, that the increase in license will decrease our sales. I know since '97, since I've had Cypress Point, well, 92, we purchased it, and then '97, I have given or sent in, or they have drawn out of my bank account $1.3 million for license. Mostly non-resident. Most of the people that come to my resort are non-resident fishermen, mainly, and the majority of them are older. We were talking about maintaining someone, a salary costs dearly to have someone in there to sell fishing license. I'll have 20 people at my door from the front of the office to the back of the office waiting to get fishing license on some days. And I have to have an extra person there, so that's a yearly salary to sell those fishing licenses. And of course, with the increase in the user's fee and filling out those licenses, which with this primitive machine that we have, I thought maybe with that 1.2 million I could, or 1.3, that I could have a new machine. But anyway, you don't know, after you've typed in the person's name or his information, you can't ever see it again. I mean, we have no idea what we've printed, except for the license, which we can go back and take those out. But those fees, you know, that with our stats that have, with the increase in license, which will decrease our sales, that's what I'm concerned about. And to stop the user's fee, I mean, it's double what we have to charge anyone to come into this into our state. And most of my customers are non-residents, which bring in plenty of revenue into the state. And maybe it should be funded, TWRA should be funded to cover those costs without increasing that user's fee and license, which will double our fees just to fish at Reelfoot. They could go to Mississippi Lakes, they could go to Alabama. When you go to the shows, which we're promoting Reelfoot, we'll promote it for 3 months. When you go to the shows, they talk about these other crappie lakes. That's what we cater to, because you know Reelfoot has been so good for crappie for so many years, and bluegill. But they can go south and get a cheaper license. I mean, when this first came in, and the gentleman that came, my understanding he was from TWRA. I didn't know he was. I'm old, so therefore I was there when the man came and asked if we wanted it. Of course, I said no. I didn't want another fee to fool with, because at that time I was selling license, and I didn't want another fee. And of course, the man, from my understanding, retired right after that, because I wanted to talk to him, because he said that we all agreed at Reelfoot that we needed that user's fee. And as far as my understanding is, that land that he said that they were going to buy with it, Black Bayou, has already been paid for. And I I don't understand how Reelfoot, is not in the black, with all the amounts of money that we do send TWRA. Thank you.
I think that, I'm not the only commissioner up here that you all have gotten our attention related to the Reelfoot fee, number one. Number two is that, if there are any increases voted on today, they do not go into effect until July 1. And that's important. You will not have to contend, if there's an increase on that, it's strictly July 1. It does not take place tomorrow. Give us some time in this window to look into this further. Chris and staff, I would ask you all, if you would, to advise us what the options are. There's some legislative matters, it sounds like, that we need to be sensitive to, and for us to act quickly today on something may in fact cause more problems, more harm than good. I would just offer that you have our word that we're going to look into it. We're going to ask if no later than the next meeting if we could get a report back on this. And the good news is you will not be charging any higher fees until after July, if you charge them at all, related to that matter.
I have a question about your point there. If we decide after today and they give us the options next month, will we have to reopen the rule to change the fee? If we go up today on Reelfoot's fee and we decide in March that that may not be appropriate, do we have to reopen a rule to change that?
In order to change the cost
Yep.
of the fee, yes. This is the appropriate time to set the cost of the Reelfoot preservation fee. Now, whether or not you want to continue charging the Reelfoot preservation fee in general, and who is required to have that, is a different discussion under a different rule.
What I've heard today is that they'd like to have it removed. So I agree with Commissioner Cannon to charge the agency to go and examine that Reelfoot preservation fee and come back to it. All right, let's go back to the floor. Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor for Rule 1660-0128. Chris?
Mr. Chairman, if it's appropriate time, the agency staff has a language clarifying amendment that we would like the commission to consider relative to the high impact wildlife management area user fee. What we would like the commission to consider is in Rule 1660-01, paragraph 15, subsection 1, delete the entire subsection and replace that with the following. A permit is required for riding hoofed animals, bicycling, and off-highway vehicle use on designated wildlife management areas. Persons holding a valid hunting license with an appropriate permit to hunt on a wildlife management area and youths under 13 are exempt. This amendment clarifies, number one, that hoofed animals, not just horses, if somebody wants to come in and ride a mule in one of our areas, this fee would apply. It also clarifies that this fee will only apply on designated wildlife management areas, which the commission will designate. And it also clarifies that persons holding a valid hunting license and permit to hunt that area would be exempt from the fee. I ask your consideration on that amendment.
Okay. Mr. Bledsoe?
This is just to clarify my understanding. If you have a valid sportsman's license,
You would not be required.
you don't have to have a WMA user fee.
That's correct.
So the sportsman's license would in effect save you some money there.
A sportsman's license would cause an individual to be properly licensed to hunt that wildlife management area, so therefore they would not need any additional WMA user fee in order to ride horses or hoofed animals on the area.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
In reference to the guide fees that we're trying to establish, when that subject's been talked about for several years, and we never came forth with what we thought the fee should be, and there was some discussion that the fee should match that as of a commercial fisherman.
Hold on a second. Let me, I tell you, hold on just a second. I apologize. Let's go back to Chris. Let me get a motion, and if we're gonna have several amendments, what I wanna do is number them, and we'll start out, I know the agency has just made a recommendation, and I apologize, Commissioner McMillan. Let's see if I get a motion for that. All right, I have a motion to have a second.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Any discussion from the audience?